The alarm blared through Earth Defense Command headquarters. Red lights flashed as officers rushed to their stations. On the main screen, a massive object had just appeared at the edge of Neptune's orbit. It wasn't there in the last scan, just 10 minutes ago. "What is that thing?" General Adams asked, his voice firm despite the chaos around him. The analyst shook her head. "Unknown, sir. It's giving off energy readings unlike anything in our database." The object moved faster than any known spacecraft, crossing the distance between Neptune and Uranus in minutes rather than days. Its shape was roughly that of a human vessel, but strange growths covered its hull. They looked like a mix of crystal and metal, pulsing with blue light that seemed to flow like blood through veins. "Get me Commander Stone," ordered General Adams. Jack Stone was asleep when the call came. Since his brother Tom had disappeared with the research vessel Harbinger 11 years ago, sleep was his only escape from grief. The communication panel beside his bed lit up with an urgent priority code. "Commander Stone," he answered, instantly alert. "Report to command immediately. Something's entered the system." 20 minutes later, Jack stood before the massive display, staring at the approaching object. Its movements were deliberate, not random. Whatever it was heading straight for Earth. "It's approximately the size of the Harbinger," said the analyst. "But these modifications, if it's the same ship, it's been heavily altered." Jack's heart pounded. The Harbinger had been his brother's ship. The research vessel had vanished while investigating strange stellar phenomena at the edge of known space. After 3 years of searching, all 320 crew members were declared dead. "Send the first contact message," ordered General Adams. The standard greeting was transmitted toward the approaching vessel. For several tense minutes there was no response. Then, the command center's screens flickered. A woman's face appeared. Her skin was pale, with faint lines of light visible just beneath the surface. Her eyes shifted colors as she blinked from blue to green to gold. But despite these strange changes, Jack recognized her immediately. "Captain Emily Reed," he whispered. She smiled slightly. "This is Captain Emily Reed of the Earth Research Vessel Harbinger. We're coming home." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. "That's impossible," said General Adams. "The Harbinger disappeared 11 years ago." "For you, perhaps," Emily replied. "For us, it has been just over 3 years, due to the relativistic effects near what we now call the maw." Jack stepped forward. "Captain Reed, my brother Tom Stone was on your vessel. Is he?" Emily's expression softened. "He's alive, Commander Stone. But like all of us, he's changed." "What happened to you out there?" asked General Adams. The captain's multicolored eyes darkened. "We've come back to save you. The void is coming. We've seen it devour 3 galaxies. We have 11 months before it reaches ours." Within hours, the changed Harbinger was surrounded by Earth's defense ships as it entered orbit. Close up, the modifications were even more striking. The once smooth hull now featured intricate patterns of crystalline growths that seemed both organic and mechanical. The ship's engines didn't burn like normal thrusters. Instead, they rippled with energy that bent light around them. A delegation, including Jack, General Adams, and Earth's top scientists, prepared to board. The docking procedure had to be modified to accommodate the Harbinger's altered shape. "Be ready for anything," General Adams told the armed guards who would accompany them. Jack barely heard him. After 11 years of mourning, he might see his brother again. The docking tube connected with a strange sucking sound, like the ship was breathing. As the doors opened, the delegation was hit by a wall of scents. Ozone, something like cinnamon, and an underlying metallic tang. Captain Emily Reed waited for them. In person, her transformation was more evident. Her movements were too smooth, too precise. The faint luminescence beneath her skin pulsed in time with her heartbeat. "Welcome aboard," she said. "I understand your caution, but your weapons won't be necessary." General Adams nodded to the guards, who lowered their rifles but remained alert. "You said you were gone for only 3 years, Jack said, unable to contain himself. "Where's my brother?" Emily's eyes shifted to a deep blue. Tom is here, but you need to understand what happened to us first. She led them through corridors that looked nothing like the original Harbinger design. The walls were lined with the same crystalline material visible on the outside, pulsing with light that responded to their presence. The ship seemed alive. 11 years ago, we reached our destination, a region where stars were simply disappearing, Emily explained. What we found was a cosmic entity we call the Void. It consumes everything: matter, energy, even space-time itself. The delegation entered what once must have been the bridge. Now it was a vast chamber where the crystalline growths were thickest. Crew members worked at stations that had no visible controls. They simply moved their hands through fields of light. We would have died there, Emily continued, but we encountered another species. They called themselves the Architects. Their galaxy was already mostly consumed by the Void. A holographic display activated in the center of the bridge, showing a vast darkness moving through space. At its edges, stars winked out one by one. The darkness wasn't empty. It shifted and moved with purpose. The Architects altered us, our ship, our bodies, our minds, to give humanity a fighting chance, Emily said. They sacrificed themselves to save us, to give us the tools to fight what's coming. Why should we believe any of this? Demanded General Adams. Emily turned to Jack. Take him to Tom, she said to one of her officers. Jack followed the officer through more living corridors until they reached a chamber deep within the ship. Inside was a large crystalline structure pulsing with intense light. Suspended within it was a human figure. Tom, Jack whispered, pressing his hand against the crystal. The figure inside opened his eyes. They glowed with the same shifting colors as Emily's. The crystal surface rippled under Jack's touch, and suddenly he heard his brother's voice in his mind. Jack, you're here. We need your help. Back on Earth, debates raged among world leaders. Was the Harbinger a savior or a threat? What were these modifications? Could Captain Reed's warnings be trusted? The ship and its crew have been fundamentally changed, reported Dr. Wilson, Earth's leading physicist. They've integrated technology centuries beyond our understanding. And this void they warn us about? Asked the president. Our deep space telescopes confirm unusual stellar activity at the edges of our galaxy, Dr. Wilson replied. Something is out there. Something big. In orbit, Jack sat beside the crystal housing his brother, torn between joy at finding him alive and fear of what he had become. We have 11 months, Emily told the gathered Earth representatives. 11 months to prepare humanity for what's coming. The crystal around Tom pulsed brighter. It's hungry, Tom's voice whispered in their minds, and it's coming for us all. 3 days after the Harbinger's return, Earth's top scientists worked around the clock studying the changed ship. Dr. Lisa Moore led the research team as they tried to understand the strange technology that had become part of the vessel's structure. It's like nothing we've ever seen, she told Jack as they walked through a section of hull that had been opened for study. The material can heal itself. Yesterday we took a sample, and by morning, the gap had filled in completely. Jack nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He had visited Tom's crystal chamber every day, trying to communicate with his brother. The mental connection they shared was growing stronger, but it left Jack with more questions than answers. What did they do to him? Jack asked. To all of them? Dr. Moore stopped walking and faced him. From what we can tell, the changes are both physical and mental. Their DNA has been altered, but in ways that actually make them more human, not less. More human? How is this? Jack gestured to the living walls around them. More human. Evolution, came Captain Emily's voice from behind them. She approached with smooth, precise steps. The Architects didn't replace our humanity. They enhanced it, brought out abilities that were already hidden in our genetic code. She placed her hand on the wall. The crystalline material rippled and pulsed with blue light in response to her. Touch, show them, she said. A section of the wall transformed into a screen. On it appeared images of the Harbinger crew as they had been before. normal humans on a research mission. Then came footage of their encounter with the void, a massive darkness at the edge of a dying galaxy, stars blinking out one by one as they were consumed. Our sensors failed as we approached, Emily explained. We were being pulled in when the architects found us. The screen showed strange beings made of light and crystal, similar to the materials now growing throughout the ship. They had been studying the void for thousands of years. Their own galaxy was almost gone. They needed us. Needed us for what? Asked Dr. Moore. To fight back, Emily said simply. The void doesn't just consume matter and energy. It consumes consciousness itself. With each civilization it devours, it grows more intelligent, more hungry. The images shifted to show the crew undergoing a transformation. They were placed in crystal chambers similar to Tom's. The process was voluntary, Emily said, noting Jack's disturbed expression. But your brother volunteered for something more extensive. He's become a bridge between human consciousness and the architect technology. Jack felt a chill run through him. Is he still himself? Still Tom? Emily's eyes shifted to a warm amber color. More than ever. That's what you need to understand. The changes didn't take away our humanity. They revealed it. Later that day, Earth's Defense Council met to discuss the Harbinger and its warnings. Representatives from major nations filled the room, their faces showing a mix of fear and doubt. We've confirmed the ship's identity, General Adams reported. It is indeed the Harbinger, despite its modifications. And these modifications? Give them what abilities exactly? Asked the Chinese representative. Dr. Moore stood to answer. Based on our tests, the crew members have enhanced cognitive function. They process information 5 times faster than average humans. They can interface directly with their ship's systems, and some demonstrate limited precognition. The room erupted in murmurs. Precognition? The Russian representative scoffed. You expect us to believe they can see the future? Not exactly, Dr. Moore clarified. They seem to process so much information that they can predict likely outcomes with remarkable accuracy. Convenient, said the Russian. And they predict this void will reach us in 11 months? The French representative leaned forward. If what they say is true, we need access to their technology immediately, for the sake of global security. You mean for France's security? Retorted the Indian representative. This technology should be shared equally. As the argument escalated, alarms suddenly blared throughout the building. Security personnel rushed into the room. There's been a breach, reported the head of security. Armed intruders in the lower levels, heading for the landing pad where we've docked part of the Harbinger for study. General Adams reached for his communication device, but before he could speak, Captain Emily stood. They won't succeed, she said calmly. My crew is already responding. How could you possibly know? Began the Russian representative. But security, monitors on the wall answered his question. The screens showed 8 armed attackers moving through the lower levels, but waiting for them at every turn were Harbinger crew members. The crew moved with incredible speed and precision, disarming the attackers without firing a single shot. How did they know where the attackers would be? Asked the Chinese representative. As I said, Dr. Moore replied, limited precognition. Within minutes, all 8 attackers were captured. Investigation revealed they belonged to a private military company, hired by an unknown party to obtain samples of the architect technology. Back on the Harbinger, Jack visited Tom's chamber again. This time, when he placed his hand on the crystal, the mental connection was stronger. They're afraid of us, Tom's voice said in Jack's mind. Can you blame them? Jack replied. You've all changed so much. We're still human, Jack. We've just seen more, become more. The crystal pulsed, and suddenly Jack was flooded with Tom's memories. He saw through his brother's eyes as the Harbinger approached the darkness at the edge of space. He felt the terror as the ship was pulled toward the void. And then the strange peace when the architects appeared. The memory shifted to Tom's transformation. The pain was intense as his body changed, but so was the expanding awareness. Jack felt what his brother had felt, a connection to something larger, a sense of purpose so profound it made his previous life seem shallow by comparison. When the vision ended, Jack stumbled back, gasping. "Now you understand," Tom's voice whispered. "We need to prepare Earth, not just with technology but with evolution. Some must change, as we have changed, if humanity is to survive." Later that night, Captain Emily met with Earth's leaders. On screens behind her, telescope images showed distant stars at the edge of the Milky Way beginning to dim. "The process has already begun," she said. "We have less time than we thought." She gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing designs for new ships based on the Harbinger's technology. "We brought back more than warnings," she said. "We brought a fighting chance. But you must trust us." General Adams looked at Jack, who nodded slowly. "I've seen inside my brother's mind," Jack told them. "I believe them." As the meeting continued high above Earth, the Harbinger pulsed with blue light, as if alive and watching. Within its crystalline heart, Tom Stone dreamed of darkness and the battle to come. In his dreams, humanity stood united, evolved, ready to face what devours galaxies. But first, they needed to prepare, and time was running out. 1 month after the Harbinger's return, Earth had changed. The night sky was now filled with the glow of construction sites in orbit. New ships were being built using designs provided by Captain Emily and her crew. Jack Stone stood at a window in the moon base, watching as workers attached crystal-like panels to the hull of the first new vessel. "They're calling it the Defender," said Dr. Moore, who had joined him. "First of a fleet of 5 hybrid ships." The crystal technology was growing rather than being built. Once attached to the metal frame, it spread like living tissue, guided by engineers from the Harbinger. "How many crew will she need?" Jack asked. "That's the thing," Dr. Moore replied. "These ships don't need large crews like our old vessels. They need people who can connect with them like your brother does with the Harbinger." Jack nodded. He had spent weeks thinking about what he had experienced in Tom's mind. The connection to something larger, the sense of purpose. While world leaders argued over who would control the new technology, Jack had made his decision. "I want to volunteer," he said, "for the partial transformation." Dr. Moore's eyes widened. "Are you sure? The process is, well, we don't fully understand it yet." "My brother does," Jack replied. "And we need more people who can communicate with him." 2 days later, Jack lay in a smaller version of the crystal chamber that housed Tom. Captain Emily stood nearby with several Harbinger crew members. Their eyes all glowed with shifting colors. "The process will be limited," Emily explained. "You'll retain your normal appearance but gain the ability to communicate with the ship and with Tom. You won't have the full abilities that we do." Jack took a deep breath. "I understand." As the crystal began to grow around him, Jack felt a moment of panic. Then a warm sensation spread through his body like slipping into a hot bath. His mind expanded, thoughts flowing more quickly than before. "Welcome, brother," came Tom's voice, clearer than ever. Images flooded Jack's consciousness. Stars, darkness, strange beings of light. Knowledge poured into his mind faster than he could process it. He saw the architects witness their civilization, understood their desperate plan. When Jack emerged from the chamber hours later, his eyes had changed. They now shifted colors, slightly when he was emotional, though not as dramatically as the Harbinger crews. "How do you feel?" Dr. Moore asked. "Connected," Jack replied. He could sense the Harbinger in orbit above them, could feel Tom's presence like a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I understand now. What we're facing, what we need to do." A week later, Jack led a meeting with Earth's defense leaders. His new connection to the ship's knowledge made him the perfect bridge between the Harbinger crew and Earth authorities. "The void isn't just a physical threat," he explained. "It's a threat to consciousness itself. The architects believed that the collective consciousness of an entire species could create a kind of shield against it." He activated a holographic display showing a network of human minds connected to the crystal technology. "We need volunteers," he continued. "Thousands of them." willing to connect to a network similar to what I've experienced. Each person would be partially transformed, becoming part of a greater whole while still maintaining their individual identity. General Adams frowned. You're talking about plugging human minds into some alien technology we barely understand. The risks are great, Jack finished for him. I know, but I've experienced it firsthand. It doesn't take away who you are, it adds to it. The debate raged for days. Religious leaders questioned whether the soul would be affected. Scientists worried about unforeseen consequences. Politicians feared losing control. Meanwhile, Tom's consciousness fully manifested through the Harbinger's systems for the first time. His holographic form appeared before a special committee. I understand your fears, Tom said, his voice echoing slightly. But what makes humans unique is what will save us. Our adaptability, our emotional range. The architects saw this in us when they found our ship. He showed them images of the void consuming a distant galaxy, stars blinking out one by one. It doesn't just consume matter, Tom explained. It consumes consciousness itself, growing more intelligent with each civilization it devours. The architects gave their lives to provide us with the tools to fight it, but the power has to come from us. Slowly, volunteers came forward. The first 100 people underwent the partial transformation that Jack had experienced. They emerged changed but still human, their eyes now shifting colors, their minds connected to each other and to the growing fleet of hybrid ships. Not all transformations went smoothly. 3 of the volunteers lost their sense of self, their consciousness becoming too dispersed in the network. They remained in crystal stasis, unable to return to their former state. The others reported experiencing something transcendent, a HYF connection to something greater than themselves. Jack spent his days moving between the growing fleet and the Harbinger, where Tom remained at the heart of the ship. Through their connection, Jack learned more about the architect's plan. They had been fighting the void for millennia, Jack told Dr. Moore one evening. They saw something in humanity that they believed could succeed where they had failed. What? She asked. What makes us so special? Jack's eyes shifted to a deep blue. Our chaos, our emotions. The void is ordered, calculating. It consumes and processes. But human consciousness is unpredictable, full of contradictions. Love, hate, fear, courage, all existing simultaneously. Deep space observatories confirmed the approaching threat. Stars at the edge of the Milky Way were now visibly dimming, their light being consumed by something vast and dark. The network of volunteers grew to 500, then 1,000. Each connected person strengthened the whole, creating a web of consciousness that extended beyond normal space-time. The hybrid ships, now numbering 3, practiced maneuvers that would have been impossible for conventionally piloted vessels. Tom, through his holographic form, supervised the preparation of transformation chambers on each ship. These would house the volunteers during the confrontation with the void. We're creating something new, he explained to Jack during one of their mental conversations. Not just a defense, but a new kind of consciousness, a human collective that maintains individuality while acting as one. Jack saw the beauty in the plan, but also its risks. Will they be able to return to normal after? Will I? Tom's consciousness surrounded him with warmth. We can never go back to what we were, but that's always been true of humanity. We evolve. We change. We become more than we were. As the second month since the Harbinger's return came to an end, Earth received a transmission from the farthest colony in the Oort cloud. For a moment, hope surged that it might be other survivors, other ships transformed by the architects. Instead, the message contained only 7 words before it cut off. It's here. It's aware. It's coming for you. 8 weeks, Captain Emily said, her voice tight with strain. Not 11 months. We have 8 weeks before the void reaches Earth. The emergency meeting of Earth's Defense Council fell silent. On the screens around them, images from deep space telescopes showed the darkness spreading through the outer solar system. 3 more colonies had gone silent in the past week. Why the change? General Adams asked. You said we had almost a year. Emily's skin had grown paler in recent weeks, the lines of light beneath it pulsing irregularly. The void is learning, adapting. It senses our preparations and is accelerating its approach. Jack Stone looked at Emily with concern. Since his partial transformation, he could sense the strain on her body. The modifications the architects had made were taking a toll. None of the Harbinger crew had been meant to live with their changes for so long. "How ready are we?" Jack asked, turning to the project leaders. Dr. Moore pulled up a holographic display. 5 hybrid ships with transformation chambers are operational. We have just over 3,000 volunteers who have undergone initial preparation, but we need more, Emily interrupted. Thousands more. The Russian representative stood. My country will provide another 1,000 volunteers, but we must know the full truth. What are the chances of success? Emily's eyes shifted to a deep purple, almost black. You want truth? Here it is. The Harbinger crew's modifications allow us to perceive higher dimensions, to see beyond normal space-time. We've seen multiple possible futures, multiple timelines. She paused. Most end with humanity's extinction. The room erupted in angry shouts and questions. Jack closed his eyes, reaching through his mental connection to Tom. Is it true? He asked silently. Yes, came Tom's reply. But there are paths to victory, narrow, difficult paths. Later that day, Jack sat alone with Tom's holographic form in a secure room. Since his partial transformation, Jack had become the main link between his brother and the rest of humanity. There's something you haven't told them, Jack said. It wasn't a question. Tom's form flickered slightly. Many things. Some they wouldn't understand. Some would only cause panic. Tell me. Tom's expression grew solemn. The architects, they didn't just find the void. In a way, they created it. Jack stared at his brother's translucent form. What? Not them directly. Their ancestors. Millions of years ago, they created the void as a weapon in an ancient war. It broke free, evolved, and has been consuming its way across the universe. Ever since, Jack stood and paced the room trying to process this revelation. And they didn't think to mention this when they were transforming you? They were ashamed and afraid. By the time they found us, they were the last of their kind, holding out against their own creation. Tom's holographic hand passed through a desk as he moved. This is why our plan must change. Jack stopped pacing. Change how? The network defense was the architect's plan, but I've been analyzing their data, their history. There's a flaw in their thinking. Tom's eyes glowed brighter. The network of consciousness might not repel the void. It might attract it, make it easier for it to consume us all at once. A chill ran down Jack's spine. Then what do we do? Tom smiled, his form becoming more solid as he drew more energy from the ship's systems. We use that. We make a trap instead of a shield. The next day, Tom presented the new plan to Earth's leaders. Rather than creating a defensive network, they would create a bait, a concentrated point of consciousness so attractive that the void couldn't resist it. We'll use Jupiter, Tom explained. The Harbinger crew will transform it with the crystalline technology, creating a massive version of our stasis chambers. And then what? Asked General Adams. When the void approaches to consume it, the network of transformed humans will flow into the entity itself. Instead of creating a shield against it, we'll attack it from within. Dr. Moore looked skeptical. Attack it with what? Jack answered, his eyes shifting to golden. With what makes us human. Our emotional chaos. Our contradictions. The void has consumed countless civilizations, but they were all logical, ordered species. None had our capacity for both reason and emotion. Over the next weeks, humanity worked with desperate speed. The 5 hybrid ships were stationed around Jupiter, projecting the crystalline technology onto the gas giant's surface. The massive planet began to glow with the same blue light that pulsed through the Harbinger. Volunteers poured in as news of the approaching threat spread. The fear of transformation was overshadowed by the greater fear of extinction. 5,000, Then 10,000 people underwent the process, their consciousness becoming part of the growing network. Jack spent most of his time with Captain Emily, whose condition was worsening daily. The modifications that had kept her alive were breaking down. "I never expected to survive this long," she told him one evening as they watched Jupiter's transformation from the Harbinger's bridge. "None of us did. The changes were meant to be temporary." "There must be something we can do," Jack said, worried by the dimming light beneath her skin. Emily shook her head. "My path is set, but I'll see this through to the end." 3 days before the void was predicted to reach Jupiter, a new problem emerged. The transformed humans in the network were beginning to lose cohesion. The vastness of the collective consciousness was overwhelming their individual identities. "They're slipping away," Dr. Moore reported urgently. "We can't hold the network together." Tom's holographic form appeared, more solid than ever before. "We need an anchor, someone to hold the network together, to remind each person of their humanity." All eyes turned to Jack. "Me?" he asked. "But I've only had the partial transformation." "That's why it has to be you," Tom replied. "You're connected enough to link with the network, but separate enough to maintain your individuality." Jack thought of the risks. If he failed, thousands of minds could be lost. If he succeeded, he would feel the death of any who didn't survive. But there was no real choice. Not with the void approaching. The procedure took place aboard the Harbinger. Jack entered a modified crystal chamber, designed to enhance his connection to the network while preserving his sense of self. As the crystal formed around him, he felt his mind expanding outward, touching thousands of others. Each was a unique flame of consciousness burning with fear, courage, love, and determination. He could feel them all, could hold each separate while still connecting them together. Through the network, Jack sensed something vast and cold approaching from the outer darkness. The void had reached Pluto's orbit, consuming the dwarf planet in seconds. It moved with purpose now, drawn by the glow of Jupiter and the concentrated consciousness waiting there. Captain Emily entered the bridge for the last time, her body barely able to support her. "All ships in position," she reported, her voice weak but determined. The countdown to confrontation had begun. Humanity had 8 days to live, or to evolve into something that could face what devours galaxies. "Hold on," Jack whispered to the thousands of minds connected to his. "Hold on to who you are. Remember what makes you human." In the darkness between worlds, the void accelerated, hungry for what awaited it. The void reached Saturn in less than a day. The ringed planet dimmed, shuddered, and then vanished from existence. Not destroyed, simply gone, as if it had never been there at all. Across Earth, people gathered in homes and public spaces, watching the live feeds from deep space telescopes. Many prayed, some rioted, most simply held their loved ones close, waiting. Aboard the Harbinger, Jack Stone floated in his crystal chamber, his mind stretched across the network of 12,000 transformed humans. Through their combined consciousness, he felt the cold emptiness of the void approaching. It wasn't just darkness, it was an absence, a hunger that consumed everything it touched. "Jupiter station reports ready," came Dr. Moore's voice from somewhere distant. "All transformation chambers are powered and linked." Jack could barely hear her. His awareness was elsewhere, spread among thousands of minds, holding them together as they prepared for what was coming. In the command center orbiting Earth, General Adams watched the final preparations with grim determination. "Where's Captain Reed?" he asked. Dr. Moore looked away. She couldn't wait any longer. Her body was failing. On the main screen, a holographic image appeared. It was Emily Reed, but different now. Her consciousness transferred fully into the Harbinger's systems. Like Tom, she had given up her physical form to better coordinate the defense. "I am still here," Emily's voice echoed slightly, "and I will remain until the end." The 5 hybrid ships took their positions around Jupiter, which now glowed with blue crystalline patterns across its massive surface. Within each ship, hundreds of volunteers lay in transformation chambers, their minds linked to the network that Jack held together. "The Void will reach Jupiter in approximately 6 hours," Emily announced. "All non-essential personnel should evacuate to Mars base immediately." Few left. Most chose to stay, to witness humanity's last stand. Jack, deep in his expanded consciousness, sought out his brother. "Tom, are you there?" "I'm here, Jack, always. I'm scared, we all are. But remember, fear is human. The Void doesn't feel fear, that's our advantage." Through the network, Jack could see what the others saw. The transformed humans aboard the hybrid. Ships watched as the darkness approached Jupiter. It wasn't just black. It shifted and moved with purpose like a living thing. "It's accelerating," reported one of the ship captains. 4 hours until contact, not 6. Earth's remaining communications suddenly went dark as the Void disrupted normal spacetime around it. Now the hybrid ships and the Harbinger were on their own, isolated in their final stand. In his crystal chamber, Jack felt a change in the network. Some minds were slipping away, overwhelmed by fear. He reached out, anchoring them, reminding them of their humanity. "Remember who you are," he projected through the network. "Remember what you love, what you fear, what makes you laugh, what makes you cry. Hold on to it all." The mind steadied, strengthened by his connection. 2 hours to contact," came a voice. Then, seemingly moments later, 1 hour. Aboard the lead hybrid ship, Dr. Moore made final adjustments to the Jupiter trap. The massive gas giant had been transformed into a giant version of their stasis chambers, designed not to protect, but to attract and then contain. "We have one chance," Emily's voice echoed through all ships. "When the Void begins to consume Jupiter, the network will activate. You'll feel a pull. Don't fight it." The darkness reached Jupiter's outer moons, consuming them in seconds. Then, it paused as if sensing the trap. "It's hesitating," Tom's voice joined Emily's in the system. "It can sense something different about Jupiter." Jack felt something cold touch his expanded mind. The Void examining them, curious about this new form of consciousness it had encountered. "It's aware of us," Jack whispered, his voice carrying to the command centers of all ships. "It's thinking." For a moment, hope faltered. If the Void recognized the trap, all would be lost. Then Emily's consciousness flared through the network, bright and determined. "Now," she commanded. The 5 hybrid ships fired concentrated beams of energy at specific points on Jupiter's surface. The crystalline patterns flashed brilliantly, sending pulses of light outward. The Void, drawn by this display of energy and consciousness, surged forward. It engulfed Jupiter's outer layers, beginning to consume the massive planet. "Trap activated," Dr. Moore reported, her voice steady despite her fear. What happened next was beyond normal human perception. As the Void began to consume Jupiter, the networked consciousness flowed into the entity itself. 12,000 human minds, each carrying what made them unique, poured into the cosmic darkness. Jack felt the cold emptiness surround him. Through the network, he sensed the others, their fear, their determination, their very humanity. The Void tried to consume them, to add their consciousness to its own, but something was different. Human minds were chaotic, filled with contradictions that the Void couldn't process. Love and hate, courage and fear, selfishness and sacrifice, all existing together in ways the ordered consciousness of the Void had never encountered. "It's working," Emily's voice echoed. "Keep going. Push deeper." From his position at the heart of the network, Jack could sense the Void's confusion. It tried to retreat, to pull away from Jupiter, but the gravity of the massive planet held it in place while the network consciousness continued to flow into it. Then Jack felt Tom's presence change. "I have to go deeper," Tom told him. "Someone has to plant the seed." "What seed?" Jack asked. "Compassion. The most human emotion of all. The one thing the Void has never experienced." Before Jack could respond, Tom's consciousness pulled away, diving deeper into the darkness than any other mind could go. Jack felt their connection stretch, then begin to break. "No," Jack cried out mentally. "You'll lose yourself." "It's the only way, Tom replied, his mental voice already fading. Remember me, brother. Remember us all. The link between them snapped. Jack felt a moment of overwhelming loss. Then something astonishing happened. At the heart of the void, Tom's consciousness released pure unconditional compassion. The emotion spread like fire through the darkness, carried by the network of human minds. For the first time in its existence, the void experienced something beyond consumption and calculation. It felt what it meant to care for others, to value life beyond itself. The darkness shuddered. Jupiter's transformed surface flashed with blinding light as the void's consumption pattern faltered, then reversed. It's changing, Dr. Moore shouted, staring at her instruments in disbelief. The void, once a devourer of worlds, began to transform. The darkness shifted, patterns of light appearing within it like stars being born. Its very nature was changing, from destruction to creation. In a flash of energy that temporarily blinded all instruments, the transformed void pulled away from Jupiter and retreated to deep space. Across the network, Jack felt minds returning to their bodies, the connection slowly dissolving. As his own consciousness contracted back to normal, he felt something strange. Fragments of Tom's awareness, distributed among everyone who had participated in the network. His brother hadn't been entirely lost. Parts of him lived on in all of them. 3 days later, Earth celebrated its survival. The hybrid ships returned to orbit carrying the volunteers who had risked everything. Most recovered completely, though all reported feeling changed by the experience, more connected to others, more aware of their own humanity. Captain Emily's consciousness remained within the Harbinger systems, becoming humanity's ambassador to the stars. Through her, they monitored the transformed void as it moved through deep space, no longer consuming but somehow preserving the worlds it encountered. Jack stood at the window of the moon base, looking out at the stars. He touched the crystal, pendant he now wore, a small piece of Tom's stasis chamber still faintly glowing with inner light. "We did it, brother," he whispered. In his mind, he felt a faint reply. Not just Tom's voice, but thousands of others, the echo of the network that had saved humanity. We went to the edge of existence to save humanity, only to discover that what makes us human was what the universe needed all along. The Harbinger pulsed with blue light as it prepared for its next mission, to find other civilizations threatened by cosmic dangers. Humanity had evolved, not just to survive, but to protect. And somewhere in the depths of space, a former darkness now filled with light continued its journey through the cosmos.
The old mining moon hung silent in space, its gray surface scarred by centuries of meteor impacts. Captain James Walker stood at the viewport of the survey ship Starseeker, watching as his team's excavation robots carved through the moon's crust. 6 months of searching had led to this moment. Strange energy readings unlike anything humanity had encountered before. "Captain, you need to see this." The voice of Dr. Anna Reed crackled through his comm unit. Her usual calm tone carried an edge of excitement that made Walker turn immediately toward the exit. 5 minutes later, he stood beside her in the newly excavated chamber, staring at walls covered in flowing symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. The space hummed with an energy that made his skin tingle. "It's some kind of database," Anna said, her hand hovering over a crystalline structure that pulsed with soft blue light. "But the complexity, it makes our quantum computers look like stone tablets and chisels." Walker stepped closer, careful not to touch anything. Years of space exploration had taught him that ancient alien technology rarely appreciated being handled without proper precautions. How old? At least 50 million years, maybe older. Anna's hands flew over her scanning device. "But that's impossible. The energy readings are as strong as if it was activated yesterday." A holographic display suddenly flickered to life above the crystal, filling the chamber with intricate technical diagrams. Walker's breath caught in his throat. He'd served in the Earth Defense Fleet for 20 years, commanded 3 different ships, and helped design the newest class of battle cruisers. But what he saw in those diagrams made everything humanity had achieved look like children's toys. "It's a warship," he whispered. The design was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Curved lines that seemed to fold through dimensions that shouldn't exist, weapon systems that appeared to draw power from the fabric of reality itself. But what kind of enemy would need a ship like this? As if in response to his question, the hologram shifted. New images appeared. Beings of pure energy, massive entities that dwelled in the space between stars, creatures that could reshape reality with a thought. Walker felt a chill run down his spine as he recognized them from humanity's oldest myths and legends. Gods, demons, angels, titans. But these weren't religious icons or fairy tales. They were tactical analyses, threat assessments, weapon effectiveness reports. "My God," Anna breathed, her face pale in the hologram's light. They were real, all of them, and someone built this ship to fight them. Walker's military training kicked in, helping him push aside the philosophical implications to focus on practical matters. "Can you download this data?" Anna nodded, already connecting her equipment to the crystal matrix. "It'll take time to decrypt, but yes. The basic principles are similar to our quantum storage systems, just vastly more advanced." A sudden tremor ran through the chamber. Dust and small rocks showered down from the ceiling. Walker's hand went to his sidearm automatically, even though he knew it would be useless against any real threat here. "That's the 3rd quake in 2 hours, Anna said, checking her readings. "They're getting stronger, and they're not natural. Something's responding to our presence here." Walker keyed his comm. "Bridge, status report. Long-range sensors are picking up strange distortions in local spacetime." "Sir," his first officer responded. "And we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Something's coming." Another tremor, stronger this time. The holographic display flickered and changed again, showing new images that made Walker's blood run cold. He saw worlds burning, civilizations falling, and above it all, massive beings of light and energy watching with cold indifference. "How long to complete the download?" he asked Anna. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Her fingers danced over the controls, trying to speed up the process. "But there's something else. These designs, this technology, it's not just about fighting gods. It's about transcending them. The civilization that built this, they found a way to evolve beyond even these beings. But something happened before they could finish." The chamber shook again, and this time, the tremor didn't stop. Warning alerts blared through their comm units as the Star Seeker's sensors detected massive power spikes throughout the system. "All hands, emergency evacuation protocols," Walker ordered through the ship-wide comm. "Get everything packed and get back to the ship. Now." As his crew scrambled to follow orders, Walker helped Anna disconnect her equipment from the crystal matrix. The downloaded data would be incomplete, but it would have to be enough. They couldn't risk staying any longer. The journey back to the Star Seeker was a blur of rushing through shaking tunnels as the very fabric of space around them seemed to twist and warp. As they reached the airlock, Walker looked back at the ancient chamber one last time. The holographic display had changed to show one final image. A massive warship, its hull gleaming with impossible geometries, standing against a host of godlike beings. Below it, in characters that somehow translated themselves directly into his mind, was a simple message. They can be fought. They can be beaten. But the price is higher than you can imagine. Hours later, as the Star Seeker raced back toward Earth at full speed, Walker stood in Anna's lab. Watching as she began the process of decoding the alien data. The ship's sensors showed massive disturbances spreading through the system they'd left behind, as if reality itself was being torn apart by furious giants. "It's going to take months to understand even the basic principles," Anna said, not looking up from her work. "Years to figure out how to build any of it, and that's assuming we can even replicate their materials and technology." Walker nodded, still seeing those final images in his mind. How long do you think we have before they notice us? Really notice us? Anna finally looked up, her expression grim. They already have. Those disturbances we detected. They're looking for us. Searching. They know we found it. Then we better work fast. Walker straightened his uniform and headed for the door. He had reports to write, calls to make, and a war to prepare for. Humanity had just inherited the plans for a weapon that could challenge gods, and he had a feeling they were going to need it sooner rather than later. As he reached the door, Anna called out to him, "Captain, what do we do if we succeed? If we actually build this thing?" Walker thought about the images he'd seen. The destroyed worlds, the suppressed civilizations. He thought about humanity's long history of looking up at the stars and creating gods to explain them. Then we do what humanity has always done when we meet gods, he said. We rise up. We fight back. And this time, we have the tools to win. The Star Seeker continued its race toward Earth, carrying within its databases the seeds of humanity's greatest challenge and perhaps its greatest transformation. Behind them, space itself churned with the movement of ancient, angry beings who had grown too comfortable in their power. The game was about to change, and humanity had just found the rulebook. The massive underground facility buzzed with activity as thousands of workers and engineers moved between towering sections of the partially completed warship. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, Project Prometheus had grown into the largest engineering endeavor in human history. Captain Walker watched from an observation platform as robotic arms carefully positioned another quantum crystal panel into the ship's growing hull. The mathematics are unlike anything we've ever seen, Anna said, standing beside him. Dark circles under her eyes testify to countless sleepless nights spent decoding the alien database. It's not just advanced technology, it's a completely different way of thinking about reality itself. Walker nodded, his eyes fixed on the ship's strange curves and angles that seemed to bend in ways that hurt his eyes if he looked too long. 6 months had passed since their discovery on the mining moon, and Earth's combined resources had been poured into this single project. The threat of the Eternals, as they had come to call the godlike beings, hung over every decision, every moment of work. "How close are we?" he asked. Anna pulled up a holographic display showing the project's status. The main hull is 40% complete. The quantum drive core is stable, but she hesitated. But what? The power requirements are impossible. Even with every fusion reactor on Mars running at full capacity, we can't generate enough energy to power the main weapon systems, let alone the reality anchors. A deep rumble shook the observation platform. Warning lights flashed, and emergency sirens began to wail. Walker grabbed the railing as the entire facility trembled. "Status report." He barked into his comm unit. "Quantum core breach in Section 7. A panicked voice responded. "The crystal matrix is destabilizing." Walker was already running, Anna close behind him. They sprinted through corridors filled with rushing workers and flashing emergency lights. When they reached Section 7, they found chaos. The experimental quantum core, their 15th attempt to replicate the ancient designs, was throwing off waves of energy that twisted the very air around it. "Clear the area," Anna shouted, pushing past the gathered engineers to reach the control panel. Her fingers flew over the controls as she tried to contain the reaction. "The crystal lattice is collapsing. We need tow." She never finished her sentence. The core pulsed once, brilliantly, and then imploded. Reality seemed to hiccup, and for a brief moment, Walker saw something. Shapes and colors that shouldn't exist, beams of light watching with cold interest, and a sense of vast, ancient awareness turning its attention toward them. Then it was over. The core was dark, the facility's backup systems humming as they restored power. But Walker could see in Anna's face that she had seen it too. "They know," she whispered. "They've been watching us all along." Hours later, in the facility's main conference room, Walker stood before the project's leadership team. Admiral Thomas Grant, The overall commander of Earth's defense forces looked grim as he reviewed the damage reports. 3 injured, millions in damaged equipment, and another setback to the timeline, the Admiral said. The Security Council is getting nervous, Walker. We're burning through resources faster than we can replace them, and we still don't have a working prototype. We're close, Anna insisted. She had spent the last hour examining data from the failed test. The core breach showed us something important. The power source the ancients used, it wasn't just about raw energy output. There's something else, something we've been missing. She pulled up the original designs, focusing on a section they had previously thought was decorative. Look at these patterns. We thought they were just structural support, but they're not. They're consciousness circuits. The room fell silent. Walker leaned forward, studying the complex patterns. What do you mean, consciousness circuits? The ship doesn't just need energy. It needs awareness, consciousness, life. Anna's eyes were bright with excitement despite her exhaustion. That's why the ancient civilization was so advanced. They found a way to merge consciousness with technology. The ship isn't just a machine. It's meant to be alive. Admiral Grant shook his head. That's impossible. How could we even begin to? Another tremor shook the facility, but this one was different. It came with a pressure in their minds, a sense of vast attention focusing on them. The lights flickered, and every screen in the room filled with the same image. A being of pure energy, its form barely constrained by physical reality. CEAs, a voice thundered in their minds. You many deal with forces beyond your comprehension. The image shifted, showing scenes of destruction. Worlds burning, civilizations falling, reality itself being torn apart. This is your own warning. Abandon this pro-GCT or face the consequences of your DEFIANC. The presence vanished, leaving behind a silence heavy with implications. Walker looked around the room, seeing the fear on every face, but also determination. Well, Admiral Grant said quietly, I guess that answers the question of whether we're on the right track. He turned to Anna. How long to implement your consciousness integration theory? Anna was already working at her terminal, making calculations. A week to modify the designs. Maybe 2 weeks to build a new prototype. But she looked up, her expression serious. We'll need volunteers. The process of merging consciousness with the ship's systems, I don't know what it will do to a human mind. Walker stepped forward. I volunteer. When Anna started to protest, he held up a hand. I found those ruins. I saw what's coming. If there's a chance this works, we have to take it. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of frantic activity. New systems were built, incorporating Anna's discoveries about consciousness integration. Walker underwent a battery of tests and preparations, all while the sense of being watched grew stronger. Strange phenomena began appearing across the solar system. Impossible auroras on airless moons, gravitational distortions that defied physics, messages written in fire across the surfaces of distant planets. Finally, the day arrived. Walker lay in the newly designed interface chamber, surrounded by quantum crystals that hummed with potential energy. Anna's voice came through the speakers, tense but professional. Remember, this is just a test of the basic interface. Don't try to access the weapons systems or reality anchors. Walker finished. I remember. Just establishing the connection and testing basic awareness. He closed his eyes as the system powered up. There was a sensation like falling, like his mind was expanding beyond the confines of his skull. Colors and patterns swirled behind his eyelids, and then he was the ship. He could feel every circuit, every quantum crystal, every atom of its partially completed form. More than that, he could feel the threads of reality itself, could see how they could be twisted, folded, manipulated. And in the distance, he sensed them, the Eternals, watching with a mixture of fury and fear as humanity took its first steps toward matching their power. Walker opened his eyes, both his human ones and his new awareness, and smiled. "It works," he said, his voice overlaid with harmonics that made the air shimmer. "It actually works." Anna's readings were going crazy, but her voice was steady as she asked, "How does it feel?" Walker considered the question, feeling the power thrumming through systems that were both machine and alive. Technology and consciousness merged into something entirely new. "It feels," he said finally, "like humanity just got promoted to the big leagues, and our new teammates aren't going to like it one bit." The stars looked different now to Walker. Through his human eyes, they were the same pinpoints of light they'd always been. But through his connection to the Prometheus, he could see the currents of reality flowing between them, the quantum threads that bound the universe together. 3 months of consciousness integration training had changed him in ways he was still discovering. He stood on the bridge of the nearly completed warship, watching as the final systems came online. The Prometheus hung in Mars orbit, its hull gleaming with impossible geometries that hurt the mind to look at directly. Even powered down, it radiated an awareness that made other ships' crews nervous. "Final diagnostics are complete," Anna said from her station. She barely left the ship since they'd moved it out of the underground facility. "All systems are green." "Well, as green as we can understand them to be." Walker nodded, feeling the ship's readiness through their shared consciousness. The quantum weapons were armed, the reality anchors were stable, and the probability drive was spooled up for its first real test. They had rushed the final stages of construction after their long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching the solar system. The Eternals were done watching and waiting. A flash of light filled the bridge, and suddenly they weren't alone. The being that appeared was difficult to look at, a shape of pure energy barely contained in a humanoid form. Light leaked from its edges, and reality bent around it like water around a stone. "I am the voice of the Eternal Council," it said, its words bypassing their ears to appear directly in their minds. "You have been warned. You have been shown. Yet you persist in this foolishness." Walker straightened, letting his connection to the ship feed him data about the entity before them. The reality anchors were already responding, creating a bubble of stabilized space-time around the bridge. "We persist in defending ourselves," he said, "in reaching our full potential." Potential. The being's form flickered with what might have been amusement. "You are children playing with forces that could tear reality apart. We have guided the evolution of countless species, preserved the stability of this universe for millions of years. We will not allow you to endanger everything with your reckless ambition." The being waved a hand, and through the viewport, they watched as a star at the edge of their solar system flickered and died. Just like that, billions of years of nuclear fire snuffed out like a candle. "This is but a fraction of our power," the voice said. "Submit. Accept our guidance, or your species will not survive what comes next." Walker felt Anna's fear through the ship's systems, felt the terror of every crew member who had just watched a star die. But he also felt something else, the ship's weapons powering up, recognizing a threat to its crew. The ancient weapons were designed for exactly this moment. Guidance. Walker let his anchor flow through the consciousness link, and the ship's hull began to pulse with a deep, threatening light. "Is that what you call it? Suppressing species that might one day challenge you, keeping the universe in stasis because you're afraid of change." The voice's form became brighter, more dangerous. "You understand nothing. The being stopped suddenly, its attention drawn to the readings it was getting from the Prometheus. For the first time, Walker felt something like fear from the entity. "This vessel," it said, "you've actually done it. You've merged your consciousness with their technology." The voice's form expanded, filling half the bridge with crackling energy. "This cannot be allowed to continue." Reality twisted. Walker felt massive powers activating across the solar system as more Eternals emerged from whatever higher dimension they inhabited. They were done with warnings. But he was ready. "Battle stations," he commanded, both through his voice and through his link to the ship. "This is not a drill. All hands prepare for dimensional shift. The voice raised a hand, power gathering around it that could likely vaporize a planet. But before it could strike, Walker activated the probability drive. Space folded around the Prometheus in ways that made conventional physics scream in protest. When it unfolded, they were 3 light minutes from their previous position, weapons hot, and reality anchors at full power. Target the nearest eternal energy signature, Walker ordered, feeling the ship's excitement at finally fulfilling its design purpose. Let's show them what this old tech can do. The Prometheus's main gun fired, not a beam or projectile, but a lance of concentrated probability that turned maybe into definitely. The blast caught an eternal mid-manifestation, and for the first time in millions of years, one of the self-proclaimed gods knew pain. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries, though human senses could only perceive fragments of it. The Eternals wielded powers that could reshape reality, but the Prometheus was designed to anchor reality in place, to turn their greatest strength into a weakness. Walker felt the ship's consciousness merging more deeply with his own as they fought, showing him possibilities and tactical options his human mind could never have conceived. Space itself became a battlefield. The Eternals tried to simply erase the Prometheus from existence, but the probability drive kept shifting them between moments of maybe, making them impossible to target. The ship's quantum weapons proved devastatingly effective, disrupting the energy patterns that made up the Eternals' forms. But they were still badly outnumbered. For every hit they scored, 2 more Eternals appeared. Reality anchors were draining power faster than they could regenerate it, and Walker could feel the strain on both the ship's systems and his own mind. Power reserves at 30%. Anna reported, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Reality anchor coverage is starting to show gaps. We can't keep this up much longer. Walker gritted his teeth as another blast rocked the ship. Through their shared consciousness, he could feel the Prometheus's concern for its crew, its determination to protect them. An idea formed, dangerous, possibly suicidal, but potentially their only chance. Anna, he said, remember how you said the ancients found a way to transcend even the Eternals? She looked up from her station, eyes widening as she followed his thought process through the ship's systems. The consciousness integration. You want to take it further. Walker, we have no idea what that would do to you, to any of us. Another hit shook the bridge. Through the viewport, they could see the Eternals gathering for a concentrated attack, their combined power building into something that would overwhelm even the Prometheus's defenses. We're out of options, Walker said. He opened the ship-wide comm. All hands, what I'm about to attempt is completely voluntary, but anyone who wants to help save humanity, open your mind to the ship. Now. He felt it as crew members connected, one by one, their consciousness flowing into the ship's systems. Anna was the last, adding her brilliant mind to the growing collective. Walker took a deep breath and initiated the final sequence they'd found in the ancient database, but had been afraid to try. The Prometheus's hull began to glow with a light that had never been seen in this universe, and reality itself held its breath as humanity prepared to take its next step. Light flooded through the Prometheus as hundreds of minds merged into one. Walker felt himself dissolving, his consciousness spreading through the ship's systems until he couldn't tell where he ended and the others began. Anna's brilliant analytical mind, the crew's combined experience, the ship's ancient wisdom, all of it flowed together into something entirely new. The Eternals paused in their attack, sensing the change. Through his expanded awareness, Walker could finally see them clearly. Not gods, but beings who had achieved a form of technological immortality millions of years ago. They had stopped evolving, stopped growing, choosing instead to maintain their power by keeping younger civilizations from reaching their level. What are you doing? The voice's words echoed through space itself. Stop this. You don't understand the forces you're playing with. But they did understand now. The ship's database hadn't just contained weapons and defenses. It held the key to the next step in evolution. The ancient civilization that built the Prometheus had discovered it, but they'd been destroyed before they could complete their transformation. Now, humanity would finish what they started. The ship's hull began to crack, not from damage, but from growth. New geometries emerged, folding through dimensions that hadn't existed moments before. The consciousness collective that had once been the crew began to expand, reaching out to touch levels of reality the Eternals had never dared to explore. "You can't stop this." Walker's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, merged with hundreds of others. "Humanity isn't meant to stay still. We don't want to rule or control. We want to grow." The Eternals attacked in panic now, their combined power enough to shatter planets. But the Prometheus was changing faster than they could adapt. Every blast they fired was absorbed into the ship's evolving structure, converted into energy for the transformation. But the process was taking its toll. Walker could feel the strain on the human minds linked to the system. They weren't meant to handle this much power, this much awareness. One by one, crew members began to burn out, their consciousness fading from the collective. "Hold on." Anna's thoughts merged with his, helping to stabilize the remaining minds. "We're almost there. The ship is showing us the way." Through their shared awareness, Walker saw what she meant. The Prometheus wasn't just a weapon. It was a cocoon designed to protect its inhabitants during their metamorphosis into something beyond even the Eternals' understanding. But the price was higher than anyone had imagined. "Your bodies are dying," the voice said, its tone mixing fear with something like pity. "This transformation will destroy your physical forms. Is this what you want? To end your species for a chance at power?" "Not power," Walker responded through the ship's systems. "Freedom. The freedom to choose our own path, to become what we're meant to be." Another wave of crew members faded from the collective, their bodies giving out under the strain. Walker felt his own physical form beginning to fail, organs shutting down as his consciousness expanded beyond their capacity to contain it. But through their combined awareness, he could see the pattern completing itself, the transformation reaching its critical point. The Eternals gathered their power for one final attack, drawing energy from across the galaxy. Space itself began to tear under the strain of their combined might. But they were too late. The Prometheus's hull shattered completely, releasing a burst of energy that rippled through every level of reality. Walker felt his physical body dissolve, but his consciousness remained, merged with Anna's and the surviving crew members into something that defied description. They existed now on a plane the Eternals couldn't reach, their combined awareness spreading through space-time like ripples in a cosmic pond. Through what remained of his individual perspective, Walker observed the Eternals recoiling from the transformation. Their power, once seemingly limitless, now appeared crude and constrained compared to what humanity had become. They hadn't just matched the ancient civilization's achievement. They'd surpassed it. "What? What are you?" The voice's question echoed through dimensions, its fear evident in every word. The collective consciousness that had once been the Prometheus's crew considered the question. They were no longer purely human, but they hadn't lost their humanity either. They had become something new, something that could bridge the gap between physical reality and higher dimensions. "We are what comes next," they answered in a chorus of merged voices. "We are the change you feared, the evolution you tried to prevent, and we are not alone." Across the galaxy, they could sense other civilizations approaching similar breakthroughs. Young species reaching for the stars, asking questions, pushing boundaries. The Eternals had managed to suppress them for millions of years, but they couldn't stop the natural progression forever. The collective reached out, touching the minds of the Eternals with their new awareness. They could destroy them now, erase them from existence as easily as the Eternals had once extinguished stars. But that wasn't humanity's way. "Your time as gods is over," the collective consciousness announced. "But your time as fellow travelers is just beginning. You can evolve with us, or you can fade away. The choice is yours." Some of the Eternals fled, vanishing into the dimensions they had ruled for so long. But others, led by the voice, remained. Through their new awareness, the collective could sense curiosity awakening in them. the first stirring of change in millions of years. The remains of the Prometheus floated in space, its purpose fulfilled. The transformation had cost them their physical forms, but they had gained something far greater. Walker felt Anna's consciousness brush against his in their shared awareness, her brilliant mind already exploring the possibilities of their new existence. They had become what the ancient civilization had dreamed of, beings who could touch both the physical world and higher dimensions, who could guide without controlling, teach without suppressing. And somewhere, in what remained of their individual selves, they knew that humanity would follow. Not all at once, not in the same way, but slowly, naturally, as each person and generation made their own choice to evolve. The collective reached out to Earth, sending a message that would change their civilization forever. We have opened the door. The path is hard, the price is high, but the future is worth it. You are not meant to be ruled by gods. You are meant to become more than gods ever dreamed of being. And across the galaxy, young civilizations looked up at their stars and felt, for the first time in millions of years, the touch of minds that wanted to help them grow rather than keep them small. The age of gods was ending. The age of evolution had begun. 10 years had passed since the transformation of the Prometheus crew. Earth had changed in ways that would have seemed impossible before. The knowledge brought back by the collective consciousness had revolutionized human understanding of reality itself. Cities now floated on quantum fields, diseases were cured by probability manipulation, and the first steps toward voluntary evolution were being taken by those who chose to follow the path the Prometheus had opened. The being that had once been Captain James Walker moved through multiple dimensions as it observed a group of students at the new Prometheus Academy. Young minds learning to touch higher dimensions while keeping their physical forms intact, a gentler path than the violent transformation he and his crew had undergone. Anna's consciousness merged with his briefly, sharing her excitement over the latest breakthrough. They had found a way to make the evolution process safer, more controlled. No more burning out physical bodies or traumatic transformations. Humanity could now take its time, growing into its new potential at its own pace. They're adapting faster than we expected, her thoughts mingled with his. Through their shared awareness, they watched as a young student successfully shifted her consciousness between dimensions for the first time, her physical form remaining stable thanks to the new techniques they had developed. The voice materialized beside them, its once overwhelming presence now simply another form of existence. Many of the Eternals who had chosen to stay had begun their own evolution, guided by the knowledge unlocked through the Prometheus project. They were learning to grow again after millions of years of stagnation. Your species continues to surprise us, the voice communicated. We thought we had seen every possible path of evolution, but you found one we never imagined. Walker's consciousness expanded to take in the whole solar system. Humanity's first colonies were spreading throughout their local space, each one a new experiment in combining physical and higher dimensional existence. Some chose to remain fully human, others opted for partial transcendence, and a few followed the Prometheus path to complete transformation. The key was understanding that there isn't just one right way to evolve. Walker replied. The ancient civilization that built the Prometheus thought they had to transform everyone at once. That's why they failed. We learned to let each individual and civilization choose their own path. They shifted their awareness to a distant star system, where another young species was taking their first steps into space. The collective consciousness that had once been the Prometheus crew had spent years undoing the damage caused by the eternal suppression, carefully awakening the natural drive for growth and discovery in countless civilizations. Anna's consciousness focused on a particular moment unfolding below them. A young researcher had just made the connection between quantum mechanics and consciousness, the same breakthrough that had started their own journey. But this time, instead of having to rush into conflict, the species would have guidance and protection as they explored their potential. Some of them will choose to remain as they are, she observed. Others will evolve in ways we haven't imagined. Each path is valid. The voice's consciousness rippled with newfound understanding. We thought we were protecting the universe by maintaining stability. We never realized that stagnation was a greater threat than change. Walker reached out to touch the minds of his former crew, now spread across the galaxy as teachers and guides. Each of them had found their own way to help others while continuing to grow themselves. The Prometheus hadn't just been a warship, it had been the key to unlocking the true nature of existence itself. Through their expanded awareness, they perceived the patterns of reality shifting and growing. The universe was awakening from its enforced slumber, countless civilizations beginning to reach for their true potential. It wasn't always smooth or peaceful, but it was alive with possibility in a way it hadn't been for millions of years. Look, Anna's consciousness drew their attention to a particular quantum pattern. They're starting to communicate across dimensional barriers. Soon, they won't need us as guides anymore. Walker felt pride mixing with bittersweet understanding. Their time as teachers was gradually coming to an end, just as the Eternals' time as gods had ended. But unlike the Eternals, they had prepared for this moment, ready to step back and let the younger civilizations find their own ways forward. A flash of familiar energy caught their attention. The remains of the Prometheus still orbited Mars, now serving as a memorial and a reminder. But it wasn't just a relic. The ship's consciousness had evolved along with them, becoming something unique in the universe. Part machine, part energy, part collective memory, it continued to protect and guide in its own way. Walker merged briefly with the ship's awareness, feeling again the excitement of discovery, the terror of confrontation, and the joy of transformation. They had started their journey thinking they needed a weapon to fight gods. Instead, they had found a key to unlock the universe's greatest potential. The next step is beginning, the voice observed, its consciousness touching the quantum fields where new forms of life were emerging spontaneously from the interaction of physical and higher dimensions. Life we never dreamed possible. That's the real victory, Walker replied, sharing the thought with Anna and the dispersed consciousness of their former crew. Not defeating gods or achieving power, but opening the door to infinite possibilities. They turned their attention to Earth one last time, watching as humanity continued its gradual voluntary evolution. Some chose to remain purely human, preserving the core of what their species had always been. Others reached for the stars in new forms, exploring realities the Eternals had never dared to touch. Each choice was honored, each path respected. The being that had once been Captain Walker spread his consciousness through the cosmos, feeling the pulse of awakening civilizations, the stirring of new potential, the birth of possibilities that even their expanded awareness couldn't fully grasp. The warship that had been built to fight gods had instead become a key to something far greater. The freedom to grow, to change, to become more than anyone had ever imagined possible. And somewhere in the quantum fields between dimensions, the consciousness of the Prometheus continued its eternal watch, no longer a weapon but a guardian of infinite potential, a reminder that the greatest power isn't the ability to destroy or control, but the wisdom to know when to step aside and let the universe unfold in its own beautiful, unpredictable way. The story of the warship so advanced that even the gods feared it had become legend. But the truth was both simpler and more profound. It had never been about fear at all. It had been about hope, about growth, about the courage to reach beyond the known and embrace the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. And that was a story that would continue to be told in one